I found a new quote. Got it? I found a new quote recently. It reads like this: I'm not the first person to say this, but one of the best things you can do as a lifelong learner is this. When you learn something new, instead of saying, why is no one talking about this? Look for the people who have been talking about it and amplify their work. I'm Sheryl Morris, and I'm a self-described seeker of truth. I'm going to be talking about James Moffett and one of his books, his last actually, from 1994, The Universal Schoolhouse, Spiritual Awakening Through Education. In preparation, I was noticing in my notes a lot of book titles and names of educators I've come to admire. I can get all these titles and names to you later. For now, I want this to be more like storytelling, where you don't need to catch and write down all the names. First, we'll do a little settling in with 3 deep breaths. I'll light a candle and then begin. I'm breathing in 3 deep breaths. Okay, so we have our candle going here. I was first introduced to the Universal Schoolhouse while listening to a podcast. One educator was mentioning another and exclaimed, he's channeling Moffett. In the same podcast, the Universal Schoolhouse was referred to as a classic, and I immediately wanted to read it. I bought a used copy, and it came heavily marked by a previous reader. That reader wasn't all too happy with what they read. I read it slowly, trying to take it all in at first. First time, not all things were clear or easy. But throughout the entire book, many remarks left me thinking, that's so true. I have a list of my favorite lines, which I find myself sharing when I read blogs or articles online that suggest a connection. Hagiography. Are you familiar with this word? Because it's new to me. Hagiography. It means very admiring of someone and representing the person as perfect or much better than they really are. I don't want to make a superhero of Moffett, but I do believe he slipped by the attention of those that would love to consider or reconsider his work and ideas. I continue to hope to find him referenced in my ongoing study of holistic education. I have found him referenced a few times, Ron Miller and Jack Miller. Many of you will know those names. Likely places I hope to find him listed in other authors' notes were not there. Some time lapsed before I found anyone else who knew much about him. I landed upon some YouTube videos, one in which a friend was paying him tribute. I found this friend and was able to connect briefly by phone when he told me that there were people re-examining Moffat's work, and he mentioned George Mason University. I have subsequently found a Moffett reading and discussion group through the National Writing Project, and I'll say more about this group later. So I've been studying holistic education, and I want to share some about what I've come to know. I myself first came to use the word holistic when it was framed as an education that nurtured mind, body, and spirit. This was in Montessori teacher training. The promise of discovery of and sharing on wonder in nature and life itself within a secular environment for young children resonated with me instantly. One doesn't need to be religious to be spiritual and know the feeling of awe and wonder. There are those who find the underpinnings of holistic education in holistic science. Today, the emerging holistic sciences are characterized by a series of shifts in perspective. Among these shifts are from focusing on quantities and measurement to focusing on qualities of interactions and direct experience or relationships. A shift from a science that tries to maximize our ability to predict and control nature, a shift from an evolutionary theory mainly focused on scarcity, individualism, and competition, towards an understanding of evolution based on abundance, diversity, symbiosis, and cooperation. A shift from the monopoly of rationalism towards acknowledging the crucial roles that intuition, imagination, and creativity play in science to complement and guide rational and analytical approaches to understanding nature. Others find their foundation for holistic education in indigenous wisdom. The online journal Holistic Education Review recently published a series of articles named Kinship Worldview, Indigenous Authors Going Deeper with Holistic Education. Published in May of this year, there are more than a dozen thought-provoking articles. Indigenous education is often aligned with holistic sciences. And now I discover still others who find the foundations of holistic education in language arts. James Moffett was first a language arts educator, a writer, curriculum developer, and speaker to teachers across the US and England. He wrote, it is said, first and always for teachers and students, not for academics. He held that discourse was a unity. Somebody talking to somebody about something, and he never lost sight of the you that was his audience. Teaching the Universe of Discourse from 1968. This was his first book. And Teaching the Universe of Discourse is the book that sets out the theory and research that inform the practice suggested in his handbook for teachers with the same name. The essays here represent, Moffett said, one teacher's, his efforts to theorize about discourse expressly for teaching purposes. The theory was developed from many sources: developmental psychology, psycholinguistics, philosophy, and literary theory among them. Over 30 years after it was first published, it still has currency and the power to generate ideas for teaching and curriculum development. After widespread acclaim for his early publications, in 1973, he was awarded a large sum of money by the publishing company Houghton Mifflin to develop a comprehensive language learning program called Interaction. Interaction consisted of a vast array of different language arts materials. It utilized culturally diverse subject matter and was designed to approximate organic, self-sponsored reading, writing, and speaking. It is an extensive collection of pedagogical materials, 800 activity cards, dozens of games, 80 hours of recordings, and 175 paperback books of diverse reading material for classes K through 12. And then came Storm in the Mountains, a case study of censorship, conflict, and consciousness. Speaking to some of the most urgent issues we're facing in education today, Storm in the Mountains recounts the aftermath of one of the most prolonged, intense, and violent textbook protests in American history. The protests were a response to Moffett's work. Interaction was labeled as too progressive and was protested to the point of cancellation by residents of Kanawha County, West Virginia. To write his book, Moffett returned a decade later to Kanawha County to speak to and interview the protesters and advocates of book banning who had objected to interaction. Interweaving their unedited interviews with official objections written by citizens in 1974, Moffett presents a moving case study of censorship in America that lays bare the many political, cultural, and religious issues which undergird society and education in our country. His last book was published in 1994, The Universal Schoolhouse: Spiritual Awakening Through Education. In this book, addressed both to professional educators and to the public, Moffett argues against the governmental initiative for national assessment and national curriculum, proposing instead that we parlay school reform into a totally individualized community learning network for all ages and merge most social services into education. In this far-reaching work, he explicitly asks his readers to suppose that the fundamental aim of living and of education is spiritual growth. In this vision, life is soul school, and education is the master social service. So I've mentioned earlier the reading and discussion group through the National Writing Project. It came together with the publication of a brand new book called Toward a Reemergence of James Moffett's Mindful, Spiritual, and Student-Centered Pedagogy. The majority of these educators so far are interested in reading and discussing Moffett's earlier work about English arts, but they assure me that they will read The Universal Schoolhouse. I'm finding it very interesting to read his earlier work and listen to teachers who appreciate him for his English and literature teaching wisdom and find ways to use it in their classes. There's more to discourse than I ever knew. It has to do with social emotional learning, empathy, critical thinking. There's more to discourse than I ever knew. Moffett acknowledged that he didn't have all the answers to all matters and situations that arise. I surely don't have all the answers. Reading The Universal Schoolhouse caused me several times to turn and observe, self-observe, to reflect on and change the way I think about some things. I want to share some of his writing that grabs my attention and has me thinking, that's so true. Qualifying and requalifying here that it's all in my humble opinion. There are 20 quotes, many very short. I've numbered them so as you are listening, grab hold of the number. Listen for those that make sense to you, for those you need to hear again, and for those you disagree with completely. I really would like to know how they sit with you. Number one, brutalized people need a personalized education most of all. Instead, we hear that children of poverty need more structure and authority than others, on grounds that their lives have lacked order and they can respond only to force. The whole point of customizing learning is to do justice to all needs and backgrounds, not just by giving choices, but arraying everything there is to choose from to ensure that old limits are offset. Number 2, if I come back to public schools, it's not, God knows, because I idealize schools. I come back to them for one reason. That's where the children are. Number 3, the governmental school reform initiative of the early 1990s based itself on precisely 2 of the assumptions most responsible for the problems that reform aims to solve. One is that assessment is the instrument of change because schools teach to tests. The second is that business knows best because public education is really just another business. Number 4, it's the users who should assess schooling, not the state. Number 5, school choice presupposes good and bad schools, and therefore favored and unfavored children. Number 6, the best ways of learning are taking place all around us all the time, if not often in public schools and in some private schools. But if not in any schools at all, then everywhere else, at home, in the workplace, on the playground. Number 7, we already know what works. More practical evidence exists for effective learning than special research could ever tell us. Number 8, being free to visit is being free to investigate. By keeping students penned up in classrooms, schools have failed to teach them how to investigate on their own and have taught them instead how to depend on others for knowledge. Number 9, reconceiving the subjects as a unified learning field will cause us to perceive how all subjects integrate at a level more comprehensive than any of them alone. Number 10, relationships between, for example, math and ordinary language, math and the arts, science and history, science and art will serve mightily to facilitate a system of education based on individuals putting together their own learning programs. Once more fully worked out, these epistemological connections will illuminate how people may integrate their own knowledge structures without violating the integrity of each discipline. This integrating learning and individualizing learning come to coincide. Number 11, it makes sense to steep small children in the arts as an organic entree into everything else, including literacy and math and science, because they are the natural growing medium in which children will generally thrive as human beings. Number 12, actually giving the arts high priority would be the best means to reverse the depersonalization of schooling that constitutes its largest single problem. Whether considering emotional issues such as alienation and low esteem, or the intellectual and motivational difficulties of math and science, the arts provide the best growing medium. At all stages, however, individual projects would be mixed with group projects. The very fact of being able to draw on many powerful resources encourages people to solo, as do the competence acquired participating in group projects. Number 14, it's clear that adults have chronically underestimated children's capacities. Number 15, if the innate life energy, the creative capacity of people of any age does not find expression, it becomes destructive. Number 16, all of us educators carry on about student involvement and motivation but the best learning can take place in a virtual trance. Number 17, for the sake of full education, any community or region needs to be supplemented and complemented by others. It is essential that any educational experiment join a far-flung network of other schools or communities, also striving to convert conventional schooling into a total learning environment for everyone. This measure is to ensure against local limitations in traditions, ethnicity, atmosphere, and other conditions. Experiments move faster, moreover, if they borrow from each other, troubleshoot together, and support each other practically and spiritually. Number 18, the fact that many people besides trained educators will be tutoring or coaching does not devalue professional educators who will be needed as much as ever to run a community learning system. It is they who will be matching up learners with the right resources at the right time, routing them around within the learning network, and tutoring and coaching with their own specialties. 19, seeing school as the community and the community as a school is the best way to realize all the aims of education, whether these are practical and intellectual or moral and spiritual. Number 20, each community should organize a totally individualized, far-flung learning network, giving all people of all ages access to any learning resource at any time. Nothing is required, but everything is made available. Users make the decisions, but avail themselves of constant counseling by a variety of parties. The very concept of schools, classes, courses, exams, and curriculum is superseded. Subjects and methods are reorganized around individual learners, forging their personal curricula in interaction with others doing the same across a whole spectrum of learning sites, situations, and technologies. That is what I'm calling the universal schoolhouse. Before we begin, before I open this up to questions and comments, I have one short video. Tom Gage introduces James Moffett. It's only 5 minutes long. I'm going to try to share my screen again. I'm not sure what happened that first time. Okay.
It's coming.
Go ahead. Good. Thank you. This is where we open it up for questions and comments. I have a question for you. Did this pique your interest? Do you want to know more? Do you feel like you would find, well, do you think you'll find and read any of his work?
There are a few chats coming through.
Okay.
And so Jackson commented and said it would be great to hear him conclude his thoughts through the other videos. And then we have a couple yes definitely's and agreeing as well.
In response to your question, Cheryl, about finding out more and picking up another book, yeah, I'm absolutely intrigued. I think a lot of what he's saying resonates, and like you were saying, that's right, that's true. I've heard that before. That sounds familiar, and that feels good when I hear that. And there's another part of me that also recognizes, wow, another book to pick up, another fantastic author and thinker. Ooh, okay. But a lot of what he was speaking to of, lived experiences and bringing the experience through every part of life. So it's not just in the public school or the private school, it's happening on the playground and in all aspects of life. I think that was one of your quotes referencing that. And another one of the later quotes was referring to how everyone in the community is a teacher, and there might be certain professionals who are there to help organize and help those students find those different teachers who would be best individually suited to those students. But it's just this fabulous reminder of how learning is not just happening at a certain time or place, but it's living is learning. And I really appreciate that reminder from the quotes you shared and from what he is speaking on. So thank you for that.
Any impressions? Was there anything? Okay, I see a hand. Rebecca.
Hello.
Hi.
From the videos, it seemed like he would be perhaps a supporter of asynchronous independent studies for some classroom environments where the teacher is more of a guide, but the students are guiding themselves. Is that the impression I should be getting?
Exactly so, in my estimation, yes. Is that
Well,
a program that you're, can you tell us more about that program?
that was most of my high school and college experience, actually. So I'm a huge supporter of asynchronous independent study. I think it's a fantastic way to learn for those who can do it. I don't think it's something for everyone necessarily, but I love independent study.
I myself am not aware as to how often um, programs like that are available. Was that offered through what kind of school was that offered through?
For high school, I attended a school called CAVA, CAVA, and I went through the LA, I think it was Palmdale, or well, it's been so long since I've been in high school. But I was in SoCal at the time, so that was the branch that I attended. I had my own computer. I attended school online, had fantastic teachers, but I was mostly just studying for myself. It allowed me to attend college from an early age. So I was able to get my degree early and continue from there.
Was this a public school? Was okay.
Yeah,
All right.
technically a public school, even though we were all at home.
Thank you. Hi, Viola.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
I just want to say something about uh, portfolios online. I was teaching Spanish at SOU. I think this was about 2000 when this came up. I was invited to a writer's workshop, and the professor was teaching us teachers about the different opportunities and ways of doing projects and having students share their projects and good ways for them to share with everyone and get interaction back and forth. And so she suggested the online portfolio. And I played around with it for a while. It was a lot of fun. The students had a project to do throughout the semester or the term, and that project was a specific topic in the language. It could have been, well, I don't know, a city or music or art or different forms of topics that they could develop into a portfolio at the end of the term. And some of the students didn't want to do it. It was just too much work. They didn't know how it would work. I didn't know how it would work either, but I thought this is a cool thing for all of us to practice and to learn how to do. So the people who did do the portfolios, it was wonderful. They had pictures of whatever they discovered. It was if it was about a city in Mexico and what or folklorico dance or something, whatever that was, they took pictures and they put them in the portfolio, and then they shared back and forth. They had interaction, they had communication back and forth. I loved it, but then the following year things changed, and then we didn't pursue it again. But anyway, I want to share that because SOU was very, in those days, way back early 2000, was very progressive about learning new things, and being creative in the way we taught. Now, the reason that I got Moffett's book, of course, because it was recommended by Sheryl, but the topic is spiritual awakening through education. So this is what I really want to. I'm a big education reform person, as you know, as some of you know. That's my thing. I do this holistic project, earth science thing, and I recommend I added spirituality as one of the things that we need to talk about developing and adding to our curriculum, whether the state tells us to have a certain curriculum or not. We can do activities, right? Whatever we want to do within that curriculum that they have. And that's what I want to know more about, more inspirational things, more ways for the teachers to find ways to bring in spirituality into the classroom. So that's what I'd like to find out more about that I can pass on.
I'm glad you shared that about the portfolios, because I've never, I just have heard about them. I've not seen them. And then sharing more things about spirituality. You know that we both know that the term awe and wonder comes up a lot when we're talking about spirituality with young children. And we can find the awe and wonder in nature everywhere. And then, of course, your platform, it's chock full with a lot of things to do to help teachers with young children to find awe and wonder. Have you ever shared with this class your link? Do you want to put your link in the chat box?
Well, I could. Let's see. I'd have to get the link. What I do, this is my passion work, what I call the great work of Thomas Berry, is I have teachers from preschool to, all the way from kindergarten. Actually, I labeled it as kindergarten through 8th grade. And it's called, it is for teachers of earth science. That specifically, that's how I started. And so it's called Holistic Education Resource Center for Teachers K through 12. I'll find the link while you all are doing something else. And it's a Facebook group, and it's private group, so that I started it as a private group, and it stayed that way, which is good. And teachers there share resources. Sheryl is one of my most prolific sharer, and so anybody can come in there and just look and see what I've got. It's in different categories and topics and so forth. It's kind of hard to explain on short, unless you actually see it. So I'll put the link, and if you want to just pop in there.
Oh, I put it in the chat already.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
No.
They might ask you to wait till it's approved, and that's okay, because I'll just go in if I get a notice that you want to join the group, and I just say approve, and you're there. And then you look at the guides, and you start looking at all the different categories to look at. Okay. Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you.
I think Jackson has his hand up. I don't know if
I don't see Jackson.
Oh, I just had something to say. It was kind of a while ago, but I'm not sure if it's still relevant, but it was just kind of a comment, if that's all right.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I guess the thing that spoke to me the most from listening to James Moffett was, obviously there's the 3 I's, the individualization, interaction, and integration. That I really liked. Kind of like finding who you are as a person and what you value, and then how can I take that person and interact with others in a way that's productive and peaceful. And I guess school for me, it maybe is like a microcosm of the larger society at play. And if you can raise and educate young people to perform and live with one another in a way that fosters sustainability. I don't really want to go so far to project some kind of moral quality to what's happening, because that, to everyone, that's very subjective on what good kids may look like. But if something is sustainable, I think it's healthy. If it's something that can continue to grow and that sort of thing. And then I love what he said about art schools and just prioritizing the arts as a foundation for the rest of learning, because it's the arts that really just inherently provides a structure for students to be themselves and to naturally take hold of expressing their own unique qualities. So that's just kind of a point of discussion if anyone wants to find interesting things about it or wants to comment, but that's all I have to say. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing. I have become a believer of you could teach just about anything with art. I know that I would have learned math a whole lot better if all of it had been done in an artful way. But of course, when you're young, you don't even know that that's possible.
Yeah, one of the one of the things that really stuck out for me was this closeness, and how this closeness heals those big wounds, those big places of trauma or struggle. And I loved that. I loved that, like that this personal touch, this really getting into contact with the students, and really being present is a way of is kind of unwinding some of that, deep trauma that they might have stored in them. And I thought that was, I don't know. I think he polarized it against the belief that those students really just need a lot of authority and a lot of structure. But it really, I think it's just a lot of presence, and how that presence is able to kind of unwind some of those deep struggles. I thought that was, that really spoke to something that I've been working with a little recently too.
I'd like to continue to think about art as the center of a lot of the practices that we're bringing into our educational settings, and how he speaks to this individualized approach and how art really can lend itself toward that. I think Jackson is speaking to this as well. And it creates this lack of competition if there's an artistic expression that's prioritized over, for example, test scores, where everyone has the opportunity to express themselves and it's not supposed to look the same. There is room for error and differences. And so I think most of us would agree that art and creativity is a pretty important part of education, but the way that he suggested that it should really be the center, I've never thought of it that way. And so I'd like to consider that more.
So Andrea, Kim here. Hi. It just, everybody, Andrea knows, Ronnie knows. Art to me is more than two-dimensional art. So every time that we let kids use their right brain interspersed with their left brain, if you believe in that stuff, okay, but the point is, it can be music, it can be dance, it can be all kinds of things when we're talking about art. And then I just would say absolutely. Thanks for bringing it up.
Thank you.
Sheryl, do you have any closing remarks before we blow out our candle?
I just want to say that I appreciate you all listening to me. I got really excited about learning about James Moffett, and I knew I wanted to share. So thank you for listening. Thank you for coming and listening. And we can blow out the candle.
Okay, I'm gonna share a screen if we all want to just take a moment to notice our breath as the candle is blown out.
And you might, Andrea, want to start that farther in.
Yes.
Okay. Bye. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. Thanks
Bye.
everyone for being here.